It was just after 1 a.m. on a Thursday night when I noticed the car. A dark gray sedan parked at the far end of the lot near Pump 4. Its headlights were off, but I could see the faint glow of a phone screen inside. I worked the overnight shift at a small gas station off Route 19. Most nights were quiet, just truckers stopping for coffee or locals passing through after the bars closed. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the only other sound was the freezer motor in the back. At first, I didn't think much of the car. People nap in their vehicles sometimes, waiting for morning. But after half an hour, it was still there. Engine running. No one got out. No one came in. Around 1:45, I stepped outside to sweep near the doors. That's when I saw movement. A man in the driver's seat, mid-40s maybe, staring straight ahead with both hands gripping the wheel. His face was lit blue by the phone screen, but he wasn't touching it, just staring. I went back inside, locked the door, and kept my eyes on him through the glass. He didn't move, didn't even blink from what I could tell. At 2:10, a delivery truck pulled in. As soon as it did, the man started his engine louder and drove off, turning right onto the highway. I remember feeling relieved, thinking it was over. But 15 minutes later, when the truck left, the car came back, same spot, same position. I called my manager, half embarrassed, and told her what was going on. She said to stay inside and call the police if he came up to the building. By 3 a.m., my nerves were shot. The cameras showed him still sitting there, headlights off, window down halfway. Then he finally got out. He walked around the car slowly, like he was checking for something, but his head kept turning toward the store. He stopped near Pump 4, facing the doors, just standing there. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. He started walking toward the store, one step at a time, hands in his jacket pockets. I picked up the phone and dialed 911. While I was on the line with dispatch, he reached the door and tried the handle. It rattled but didn't open. His eyes lifted to meet mine through the glass, expressionless. The dispatcher told me officers were on the way. I stood frozen behind the counter, staring at him. He stayed there for maybe 20 seconds, then turned and walked back to his car. But instead of driving off, he backed up just enough that his headlights faced the front windows. Then he sat again, watching me from inside. When the police finally pulled in around 3:25, the man took off. They caught up with him a few miles down the highway. Later, one of the officers came back to tell me they'd found rope, duct tape, and a kitchen knife in the passenger seat. He said the man told them he was just waiting for the right moment. I didn't ask what that meant. I didn't need to. That was my last night working the overnight shift. Story 2. The guest in room 108. It was a slow Tuesday night at the small roadside motel where I worked the overnight desk. Only 8 rooms were occupied, mostly truckers and travelers who checked in early and went straight to bed. By midnight, the place was quiet enough that I could hear the vending machine humming down the hall. Around 12:30 a.m., the front door buzzer went off. I looked up from my paperwork and saw a man standing outside. Mid-40s, tall, wearing a wrinkled button-down and no coat despite the cold. He smiled faintly when I buzzed him in and said he needed a room for one night. His voice was calm, but strange, like he had to think before each word. I swiped his card, but the payment failed. He didn't react, just said, "Try again." The second time it went through. I handed him the key for room 108, and he looked at me longer than normal before walking off toward the hallway. About an hour later, I was refilling the coffee machine when I saw movement on the camera feed. It was him, standing at the end of the hall by the ice machine. He wasn't doing anything, just standing there, facing the camera. After a few seconds, he turned and walked out of frame. At 2 a.m., I glanced up from my computer and saw him again, this time in the lobby. He He didn't approach the desk. He just stood near the corner, half hidden in the shadows, facing the vending machine. I asked if he needed anything, but he didn't respond. After a few seconds, he turned his head slightly and said, "You're the only one working tonight, right?" That made my skin crawl. I tried to sound calm and told him yes, but that my manager was upstairs doing room checks. It wasn't true, but he didn't need to know that. He just smiled and said, "Good," then walked out of sight toward the hallway again. I checked the cameras immediately. He was on the first floor, going door to door, stopping at each one for a few seconds. Sometimes he'd lean in close to the peepholes like he was listening. That's when I called 911. While I was still on the phone with dispatch, he came back into the lobby. His eyes locked on me through the glass of the office window. He didn't blink, didn't move, just stood there, breathing heavily. The dispatcher told me officers were 2 minutes away. I stayed crouched under the desk, listening to the soft squeak of his shoes on the tile. He was walking around the counter now. I could see his shadow under the door. Then the sirens came. He bolted out the front doors just before the police pulled in. They found him hiding behind the dumpster out back. When they searched him, he had a master key set stolen from a nearby motel chain. They said he'd been staying in motels across the county, pretending to be a guest while waiting for night staff to be alone. I quit the next morning. Now, anytime I check into a hotel, I still glance at the door log before sleeping, just to make sure no one's been inside while I wasn't looking. Story 3. The delivery that never came. I worked the overnight shift at a small 24-hour warehouse just outside of town. It's mostly sorting, labeling, and signing for deliveries that come in after hours. Most nights it's dead quiet, just the hum of the lights and the distant echo of trucks on the highway. That Thursday started out like any other. It was around 1:15 a.m., and I was in the break room heating up coffee when I noticed headlights sweep across the windows. A delivery truck had pulled into the loading dock. I checked the schedule. Nothing was due until 3 a.m. I stepped out onto the dock, clipboard in hand, expecting one of our regular drivers. Instead, a man I didn't recognize climbed out. "Got a drop for you?" he said. His voice was low, flat. He handed me a folded delivery slip. It looked wrong. The company logo was smudged, and there were no tracking numbers. When I asked which distributor he was with, he hesitated before saying, "Third shift dispatch. New route." Something about the way he said it felt off. I told him to wait while I called my supervisor. He nodded but didn't move, just stood by the truck door, watching me through the dim light. When I called my boss, he confirmed there were no unscheduled deliveries that night and told me not to accept anything. I hung up and went back outside, but the man was gone. The truck's engine was still running, and the back doors were wide open. I called out, but no answer. The inside of the trailer was pitch dark. I reached for my flashlight and shined it inside. What I saw made my stomach tighten. There was nothing in the truck. Completely empty, except for a single pair of gloves lying on the floor. I went back inside and locked the dock doors. For the next hour, I tried to convince myself it was some kind of mix-up. But at 2:40, I heard a loud metallic clang from the far end of the warehouse. I froze. No one else was supposed to be there. I grabbed the flashlight and followed the sound. One of the side doors, the one leading out to the fenced lot, was open. When I shined the light through it, the beam caught something moving between the stacked pallets outside. A person. The same man crouched low, watching me. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and called 911. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line. I could hear footsteps circling the building, sometimes stopping right near the walls. Then silence. When the police arrived 20 minutes later, the truck was still idling, but the driver was gone. They searched the area and found footprints leading into the woods behind the property. A mile down the trail, they found another truck, same make, same color, but with a different license plate. I still work nights sometimes, but never alone anymore. Whenever I hear a truck pull up, I wait until I see the company name clearly before I open any door. And every time I do, I remember that empty trailer and the way that man smiled before he ran.